Here we go. We're recording. Yes, thank you, Giovanni. We are here today for the Workforce Development Advisory Committee, or WDAC for short, the subcommittee meeting. And so we appreciate everyone joining us today. We want to thank the California Energy Commission, our partners at EPRI and CalSTART. And you're going to hear from some folks from these organizations and Grid Alternatives as well. Let's go to the meeting agenda. And if we can just take one quick minute there, we're going to do a welcome and overview. We're going to share the draft workforce development plan that we've been working on and that we received feedback from all of you. We will review your feedback and some of your comments, and we'll talk about next steps for the project. My name is Stella Ursua, and I'm the Senior Programs and Partnerships Manager. As a reminder, the webcast is being recorded. And so by participating in the call, you can set your name, your voice, and your contribution will be included in our recorded materials. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my partner, Adewale Ogunbadejo. And Adewale will help with some introductions for today. Adewale?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Stella. My name is Adewale Ogunbadejo, VP for Workforce Development for Grid Alternatives. And I'm here in place of Shamika Dixon, who is our Director of Workforce Development for Greater Los Angeles. We'd like to just take a couple of seconds per person to do some introductions. Please share your name, the organization, and your title. And then the GLA team and CalSTART team will start that off, and then we'll move on to the attendees. So Giovanni.
Yes, no, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Giovanni Hernandez, Senior Community Engagement Coordinator with Grid Alternatives, Greater Los Angeles. Pleasure to be here with you all today. I'll popcorn it over to my colleague, Ashley.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Martinez. I am the Workforce Development Program Manager with Grid GLA. And I am going to go ahead and pass it over to Yoremi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yoremi. I am a COCULB student, and I'm currently working with Grid as a clean mobility intern. And I'll pass it to Nate.
Thanks, Yoremi. I'm Nate Fernandez. I'm a lead technical project manager here on the Clean Fuels and Infrastructure team at CalSTART. And I'll pass it to my colleague, Tuan.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tuan Chi, and I'm a project manager here at CalSTART, working with Nate on the eTruck Retta project. And I'll pass it back to Stella.
Just real quick, one more time, Senior Programs and Partnerships Manager here at the LA office. Thank you, Tuan. And Kristen, did you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Kristen Bush. I am with EPRI's electric transportation team as an engineer scientist. And I think Andra is also on the call. So if you want to introduce yourself, I'll pass it on to you.
Sure. Thank you. Andra Rogers. I'm a project manager at EPRI in electric transportation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Andra. And Giovanni, we wanted the folks on the call to introduce themselves as well.
Yeah, we were just thinking, since it's a smaller group, 10 seconds, everyone, name, organization, just so that we can acquaint ourselves better with one another.
Perfect. And I'm going to call on someone to get started here. How about Dr. Michelle Yanez?
Good morning, everybody. As you already shared, my name is Dr. Michelle Yanez, and I'm the project manager for the United Steelworkers Proterra Electric Bus Manufacturing Program. We are an HRTP, a high road training partnership. And actually, Hector Hueso, who's also on this call, Jobs to Move America, is one of our partners, and the county, and WDAC, the county. So we're really excited to be in this meeting, and I want to learn how we can, find how we can collaborate.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Yanez. Hector, do you mind going next?
Happy to. Thanks, Stella. And hey, Dr. Yanez, good to see you again.
Good morning.
Good to be on with everyone. Hector Wessel, I'm the California Director for Jobs to Move America. We work on good job creation, wherever public spending is sort of involved. And we were part of the coalition of folks that helped get Southern California's cluster of electric bus manufacturers to commit to good jobs, commit to training programs. We helped them go union, and where we want to see that public funding, especially in the clean energy transition, continues to result in more like good jobs, family sustaining wages, and opportunities for more of the economy to be in the hands of working people. And I can popcorn it if that would be helpful. Why don't I send it to my colleague Juan Romero at the City of LA.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Juan Romero. I'm with the City of Los Angeles Economic Workforce Development Department, and I'm under the Employer Services Unit here representing our department. So thank you again.
Thank you, Juan.
And I'll pass it over to Kristen Bush.
Oh, she's already gone, Juan. Thank you. I'll just go ahead and select Kimberly Collins.
Sorry. Hi, good morning. Kimberly Collins. I'm the director of the Leonard Transportation Center at Cal State San Bernardino, and I'm a professor in the public administration department, and I teach primarily public policy issues. So I'll just leave it at that. If you have any questions, I can answer.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kimberly. How about Dr. Rawls?
Hi, I'm Crystal Rawls. I'm at Cal State University Dominguez Hills, and I am the director of the Workforce Integration Network.
Thank you, Dr. Rawls. Brianna?
Hi, Brianna Martin from Zeem Solutions. We are an electric vehicle fleet company with an operational depot out in Inglewood, building depots across the United States, pretty much. A lot of interest in California.
Thank you, Brianna. When? Dr. Cheng?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm a professor and the associate chair of the Department of Civil Engineering at the Cal Poly Pomona. I teach transportation safety, gas emission, and some other transportation stuff. Glad to be here because zero emission transportation is our future. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Jackie? How you doing?
Yes, good morning, everyone, all my beautiful people. I'm Jacqueline Baldejo, CEO of Watts Clean Air and Energy Committee. I served on the Watts Neighborhood Council as the transportation representative for those beautiful 7 years. And it's something that's very near and dear to me, and we advocate for green jobs. And this is a big portion of it. And I like to shout out that I'm one of the graduates of the all-women Lacey EBSE training with Charger Help. And so this is something that's real. And as a leader of the community and advocate with the legislation and things that's being passed, I want to make sure that it makes sense and that we're reaching the ground level. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Congratulations. That's fantastic. Right on. How about Janet Malik?
Good morning. I'm Janet Malik. I'm from Cerritos College. I work with the California Community Colleges system in advanced transportation and logistics, specifically in the workforce development piece for both, vehicles, infrastructure, clean energy, clean transportation. So we develop and train both incumbent workers and at the community college system. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Janet. How about Tremaine?
Good morning, everyone. Tremaine Mitchell, co-founder and executive director of Youth Action Project. We're a San Bernardino or Inland Empire-based workforce development agency and specifically doing some HRTP work around African Americans and infrastructure sectors, and even more specifically, clean energy, transport, and cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you, Tremaine. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all. Really appreciate it. All right. Adewale, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say great. Thank you, Stella. And with that, I think we would hand it over to Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Adewale. Yeah, so just a quick project overview of eTruck Retta. The purpose of this project is to create a California research hub to facilitate and accelerate the electrification of the medium and heavy duty drayage vehicle market in key areas. And by key areas, we mean in and around the ports and in and around the distribution centers and the corridors, freeways connecting the two. These are the areas where drayage truck drivers, drayage workers spend the most of their time, and these are the areas that are mostly impacted by drayage activities. So that's our focus. And as for project goals and objectives, we are advancing research, development, and demonstration activities that extend the delivery range of large weight class battery electric trucks, beginning with drayage operations. And we're engaging broad stakeholders with a community first approach, and we're using that input to promote equity and workforce development opportunities in priority communities. So like I said, these are the pollution burdened and impacted communities in and around the ports and distribution centers and everything in between, basically. And we're reaching out to truck fleets, charging equipment and service providers, electric utilities, and planning agencies, try to build out that workforce. Lastly, one of the last main work areas of this project is to plan, design, and deploy innovative, scalable public corridor charging strategies for medium and heavy duty electric trucks, beginning with drayage trucks. And really the point here is that we want this project to act as a blueprint. Like, what's successful about this project? We want that to inform future projects all over California, all over the United States. So scalability is a big aspect of this project, especially when it comes to building out the corridors. Next slide, please. Okay, so then what are the specific goals, objectives, and functions for this group? Recap of that. The WDAC goal is to ensure that pollution impacted, underserved, and tribal communities are involved in creating and guiding the initiative, so the project, and that these priority communities are involved and benefit from the larger clean energy transition, medium and heavy duty electrification, jobs created, and other resultant economic opportunities. The objectives are to inform the project on workforce development needs and desired impacts for priority communities, communicate project activities to relevant key partners and stakeholders, to promote equity and workforce development opportunities in priority communities, and to foster workforce development partnerships in the targeted priority communities for zero emission freight corridor technology and development planning and job creation. So the function of this group is, one, what we're doing here today, providing input on the workforce development plan. Two, to support equity and workforce development goals. And three, to inform the workforce development plan and accompanying activities as described in the workforce development plan. Next slide, and I think I'll be handing it off to Adewale.
Great, thank you, Nathan. And thanks again to everybody here today. It's good to see such a diversity of stakeholders. I think, past grid partners, current grid partners, and, future partners. So we want to make sure we get this right. And we want to make sure that, the communities that we work collectively and serve in are benefiting from this transition to electrification. So before we get into the workforce development plan, we want to ask everyone to make sure that you stay muted until the very end, where we've allotted some time for discussion and answering of the questions. However, you can type questions into the comments and feedback into the chat so that we can sort through them once we get into the discussion portion. So next slide, please. So we're going to get into the overview of the workforce development plan and look at it chapter by chapter. Chapter 1 is really the workforce development plan and purpose, and it's a description of planned partnerships with the educational institutions such as the community colleges, the universities, the high schools, and other workforce development programs to support the MDHD ZE transportation training in Southern California and statewide. And then we want to identify MDHD ZEVs, OEMs, and suppliers to leverage training modules and programs for workforce development. And then we want to identify workforce recruitment organizations to support workforce training, recruitment, and job placement. So the plan will really benefit stakeholders by providing information and soliciting guidance on the following: identifying existing and anticipated workforce development needs and industry barriers, identification of opportunities for workforce development and education across different MDHD transportation and charging infrastructure segments, proposed workforce development strategy and timeline, and then development of new training materials that improve existing resources related to medium and heavy duty zero emissions transportation for workforce development. So next slide, please. Chapter 2 will really be who are the stakeholders and what is the strategy for identifying the stakeholders. So we want workforce development stakeholders who can provide critical guidance and feedback on workforce needs and training related to this project. And we want to be contacted for membership in the Workforce Development Advisory Committee. Stakeholders within and surrounding key dry edge corridors and affected disadvantaged communities have been identified as potential participants for this committee. And potential participants in the committee have been identified based on our knowledge, expertise, experience, and extensive network list. We've identified stakeholders will be encouraged to recommend and help identify other key stakeholders that we feel should also be informed, or also form part of our Workforce Development Advisory Committee. So as you're going through it, if there's other partners or stakeholders that you think should be in the room, we would ask you to please make recommendations. And as you can see, who the stakeholders are to us range from community-based organizations to, again, the community colleges, workforce development organizations, local labor unions, all the way to startups and incubators. Next slide, please. So what is the strategy or the methods of engagement? The E-Truck Retta project team is really committed to creating an engagement strategy that is democratic, transparent, equitable, and centered around disadvantaged and environmentally impacted communities so that we can ensure a community-first approach. E-Truck Retta has identified a number of activities and methods of engagement that will support effective communication and information sharing. Engagement methods for communicating mission, goals, and metrics, and for both soliciting and providing guidance and feedback to key stakeholders. The methods of engagement will include these advisory committee meetings, educational workshops, industry partner presentations, videos created by partnership and technology orgs, educational components for local high schools, colleges, STEM schools, and educational institutions. Then digital strategy and social media, for example, project website, email updates, communications, a social media strategy, digital surveys, etc. And finally, a description of planned partnerships, for example, government agencies, municipalities, medium and heavy duty zero emissions, OEM manufacturers, and other key entities. Next slide, please. So chapter 5 is the workforce development evaluation criteria, and it's proposed equity and engagement evaluation criteria that may include, but not be limited to, number of workforce development events and number of participants from communities adversely impacted by the MDHD trucking corridor, for example, pollution and air quality. Maybe the number of individuals served that have the highest level of barriers to employment, including but not limited to justice-involved, opportunity youth, and veterans, and then identifying the number of cities creating green workforce development plans. The workforce development plan will be created with the following information: number and types of new training materials, new employment opportunities and placements, number of jobs spurred through projects, whether it's in manufacturing, engineering, construction, and maintenance, job quality, opportunity for career advancement, as well as family sustaining wages. Next slide. So after all that's done, then we'll have chapter 6, which is a description of anticipated outcomes from the workforce development plan. eTruck has focused its workforce engagement efforts to achieve several specific outcomes: to foster and develop a wide array of partnerships and stakeholder relationships throughout the entirety of the project, to leverage industry, community, regulatory, and stakeholder engagement to equitably advance medium and heavy duty battery electric vehicle technologies and infrastructure to provide economic, environmental, and public health benefits to historically disadvantaged and low-income communities. We want to use stakeholder input to promote equity and workforce development opportunities in the communities we have prioritized. And then we want to develop and disseminate project learnings and recommendations for best practices around training, employment, and career pathways in the medium and heavy duty zero emissions transportation sector. Next slide. So then we'll get into the discussion of how do we scale and replicate, not just in the state, but throughout the country, looking at it, from a national level. And the fundamental goal of eTruck is to use lessons learned, feedback, and other project findings to scale and replicate the project, like I said, across not only the state, but across the country. And we want recommended practices that will be developed to include the following: be able to conduct an assessment at the end of the overall project and collect feedback from the committee members, evaluate success metrics of workforce development strategies, determine strategies that can be replicated for future deployment of MDHD vehicles, provide templates for easy replication. And lastly, we want to identify and recommend practices throughout this plan and incorporate them into the technology transfer plan to ensure that effective stakeholder guidance is scaled and replicated in future projects. So with that, I will pass it back to Stella so that we can begin to look at the discussion questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Adewale. Really appreciate that. That's a lot, right? And all of this came from, the collaboration with every person on this, on the workforce committee and the subcommittee. So again, really appreciate your input here. So we just have a few questions. What do you like? What's good about, the plan? What's missing? And what, if anything, should be changed? All right. So you're seeing this, just, kind of a quick overview, but anything that struck you that you thought, oh, you know what, this makes sense. This is really important to, to include in this plan. And then what's missing or what should be changed. And we will be, gathering all this data, again, because we want to make sure that we have your input throughout this process. So anyone want to, jump in, or if you want to raise your hand, I'll be looking for those hands up, but by all means, just go ahead and jump in.
I have a question.
Yes, Dr. Yanez.
Will the training that you're going to develop, are you going to provide the training? That would be my first question. Will it be in technicians or construction of charging stations, or will it be various curriculums? I'm just curious how, what's going to be the focus of the training?
Yeah, so, and Adewale, I'm going to ask you to jump in, and Giovanni as well. One of the things that we've been tasked with, Dr. Yanez, is, well, first, the community engagement piece, right? That's really, really critical. And then the workforce development piece. And so what we're doing is working with all of you, but as well industry partners. You see someone from Zeem Solutions, right? We're doing that outreach as well to bring folks to the table to tell us what types of programs do we need to develop. And what community college partners should be involved, et cetera, right? So, this is our, our process to gather all that information and then to present it to our partners, CalSTART, EPRI, and eventually to the CEC. So we will be making those recommendations as a result of these committees. Adewale, anything else? Did I miss anything there?
I don't have much to add. I would just say that I think we're in the phase of really putting a workforce development plan in place that can be effective in impacting the communities that we collectively serve. And that's why we want the right stakeholders in the room so that, after we get through the plan, when it's time for implementation, we've really, I think done an analysis and looked at the barriers to making sure that we're informing and training the community and that the outcomes are quality jobs, family sustaining, wages that are accessible, to the communities that we're working with. So I think right now we're really like in this kind of planning phase. Is the workforce development plan and strategy correct? So that when it's time for implementation, we have something that's really sustainable and scalable.
Thank you. That's really great that you have all this, that you have time to pre-plan before you just start training. So that's great. You're going to be informed. I like that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you for your question, Dr. Yanez. Any other responses from the team? If not, we can move on to any other questions out there. I do see a question in the chat from Juan. How many people do you plan to serve? Juan, we're starting with this pilot program right now, right? And so, again, our goals are to make sure that we have engaged in an equitable manner, all the folks that live around the pilot area, so along the 710 corridor, right? And so that's our first goal. Make sure that we have folks, at the table so that they can have input. Then, we'll move on to, I believe it's the 10 freeway. And so, throughout that process, again, we're going to be interacting with workforce development organizations, with colleges, with industry partners, and then we should get a sense for, how many people we're going to need to bring up to speed on electric trucks, medium duty, heavy duty trucks, charging station, charging hubs, etc. So, we're hoping that we are able to gather that information to make a determination of how many people that we're going to need and we're going to need to serve. We're working with, you see, Dr. Crystal Rawls on the call, who's been very helpful, just, getting us to think about, what do we need to identify, right, in the way of potential workforce opportunities. So, we're going to bring more and more people into that discussion. Dr. Collins is also involved with that. And so we will continue to do that as we work through this pilot. There's another question. What I saw missing from Danny. I'm sorry, Danny Gamboa. What I saw missing is potential technical input on software hardware issues relating to zero emission vehicles. This relates to barriers, but also planning gaps in strategies for training and vehicle development. I don't know, Danny, if your connection is, if you're still able to share a little bit about that comment there. Maybe not.
He indicated, or they indicated they could contribute by typing into the chat.
Okay.
But my little thumbs up seconds that discussion, but the data, the labor market data speaks to that. So we will get there.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Wallace. Appreciate that.
I just had a reaction to that. I like that feedback. I think that's totally something that we could incorporate into the plan. I haven't really thought of that, but we have our ITAC, our industry technology advisory committee. We have a whole bunch of OEMs and tier 1, tier 2 industry partners that we're working with, so we can identify these sort of technical issues that we'll have to be bringing up and dealing with as we're thinking through like the training and the workforce development. And I'm curious, Dr. Rawls, you're saying the labor market data reflects some of this. Is that something that you could share with us? Is there a file that we could look through to see what the market is actually showing in relation to these sort of technical maybe interoperability issues?
Sure. I believe there is a planned discussion that they're already planning to have when we can really further narrow down and refine some of the parameters of a general report that I've run. So I think I recognize Dr. Chen's hand is up, but also I'd have to pitch that to Giovanni.
Yeah, no, happy to chime in on that, Dr. Rawls, and thank you for that wonderful recommendation, that connection you made, Danny, to spur this conversation here that we're having on this particular piece. So yes, we are in talks for the next WDAC meeting that is set for January 12th. We want to kind of bring to the table some of this data that we're talking about. And so we've been in communication with Dr. Rawls, about, running a report, right? And so there's some pieces of information that we're getting to Dr. Rawls specific to the target areas along the 710 corridor that we'll be targeting. And other pieces of information that she needs to be able to run a specific report that's not going to be too general, too vague, that then she can present, to the entire WDAC group, the larger group, at the next WDAC meeting. So that is the plan, so that then it could spur more conversation and see like what other ideas come out of the group based on some of the data that preliminary information data that Dr. Rawls would be able to pull, right? So that is the plan, but for the next meeting. But I'm glad folks are thinking about it, and we are going to get there, and I think dive more deeply into it at the next meeting.
Awesome, thanks for that.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Rawls, and thanks, Nate, for the follow-up. And Dr. Cheng, you had a question?
Yes, I do. Just to maybe I can start with what's good by looking at the presentation done by Adewale. I have to say the group did a fantastic work for the draft of the workforce development plan framework, and it's very comprehensive. Covers almost every different piece of the plan, including the background, the purpose, the criteria, stakeholders, and evaluations, and the scalabilities, and almost everything. And I'm very impressed with that. And what's missing, since it's so comprehensive, I have to say, it's very hard to find the missing part, but probably, one thing we can improve a little bit is associated with Chapter 5, the workforce development evaluation criteria. Right, Adewale, you mentioned the different criteria, including the number and types of new training materials, the new employment opportunities, a number of jobs, job quality, opportunities, family sustaining wage, and associate. I think those are good, but what we are missing right here is how to implement those evaluation, the procedures to implement those evaluation, right? Instead of just the overall criteria, but how to do that in detail. For example, how to identify the target respondents. I mean, how often we're going to do the survey, just one time issue, or just frequent survey and follow-up survey, something like that. Those are something maybe I can suggest to include into it can be part of Chapter 5, or can a standalone chapters. It's up to the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cheng. That's really helpful. Really appreciate your feedback there. Dr. Rawls, you had your hand up.
So Dr. Chen's comments made me think of some other things. So first of all, I agree that it was so comprehensive that as I was reading it, I wasn't really able to pull out, what's missing, because it was so comprehensive. There was just a lot of information front loaded. But as we're talking about this, as we're talking about replicability, evaluation and assessment, some of us are faculty and we write papers, and our participation in this project, is this something that scholarship would be centered around, and what would be our access level to that data, right? Would we be able to use the data that we're collecting as we're helping to develop surveys and develop what have you, right? Helping to analyze the landscape, for example. So I thought that piece was missing, right? Like, how do we share and disseminate what's allowable and what's not?
Thank you for that. And I would just say immediately, I agree. I think it is very comprehensive, and I think it calls for us to really deconstruct it now that we have all the right elements in place, and then plug in the stakeholders so that we can build out those different, kind of areas that we're talking about that Dr. Rawls and Dr. Chang have identified. So though it is comprehensive, I think we have to deconstruct it so that we can, for example, anything academic, we can address that. Anything on the employment side or the labor union side, we can bring in other stakeholders to address those things as well.
Yeah, thank you, Adewale. Thank you again, Dr. Rawls. Any other comments, feedback? What's working, what's good, what's missing, anything needs to be changed? And yes, it was a lot of information, but we again really appreciate your input here. Jackie, I see your hand up, and then we'll go to Dr. Chang again.
Yes, everything was very comprehensive, and I'm just trying to review everything. I think it's already maybe embedded just off the principle of everything with the engagement, but I feel that this is something that needs the momentum of even having its own communication, whether it's communicating to, the institutional stakeholders or the person on the ground level, somewhere where, the message is loud and clear and it's the resource and it could be connected to the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And yes, absolutely. We're talking about next steps, and part of that being the ongoing communication process, because we invited a lot of folks to join the advisory committee, or just to learn about this particular pilot project, right? And there were some folks that said, would love to attend, just don't have the bandwidth right now. And so what Giovanni and the team is doing is we're making sure that we continue to communicate with the folks that we invited. And so we're sharing the PowerPoint presentations, we're sharing the recordings, we're sharing any fact sheets that we're working on. And we want to do a press release, with CalSTART and EPRI in the near future. We want to do more industry partner presentations and education component so that we're all learning about this effort, and again, about electric trucks, about charging infrastructure, right? So it's going to be an ongoing process that we start to build, before the end of this year, and then especially moving into the first quarter of next year. So great feedback. Thank you, Jackie. And Dr. Chang?
Thank you, Stella. And, no further comments, just maybe some clarification needed from you or Adewale or some others. For chapter 2, I am so glad to see the long list of stakeholders over there, including the CBO, the local government departments, academic institutions, the college, local high school workforce development organization, and some others. So I know probably the main reason to include the local high school right there, mainly because of maybe the green academics, right, or STEM school, something like that. But what is the cut line to just to cut at the high school right there? No middle school, or not even exclude high school. So is there any clarification, regarding that?
Stella, you want to tackle that, or you want me to jump in? Or
Yeah, if you want to jump in, Adewale, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, from where I sit, I would say initially, the thought is creating pipelines into employment opportunities. So I don't think we want to initially go too young in age. There's, I think, between high school moving into opportunity youth and then full on adults, already a very large population that we have to figure out how to serve. So I think once we get a grasp on that, then we can look at maybe what a more comprehensive program, if you will, looks like that can serve a greater demographic in terms of age.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. Nate or anyone from CalStart, any thoughts there?
I would say I just agree with Adewale on that.
Okay. All right, good deal. I see some more hands up. I think Jackie and then Kimberly.
Yeah, it's just really considering like the equity component of this all. I'm thinking about in the summer how many youth cried because they had to get vaccinated to qualify for the workforce development program, like through the city. It's like so many different things to consider outside of that. And I know we're focused on workforce development, but also like understanding that they can also build businesses from the industry and learning them learning how to understand the industry, how it's all connected, and how they can have a pathway to go beyond just the workforce. And then also thinking about how we're looking forward to identifying the potential courses and curriculums for the various workforce. I wanted to see like what type of timeline do we have on really creating that list of how it cross references with like career track education, all the way from at least high school through junior college and the university, because the reality is a lot of schools, they're focusing on this topic already in middle school, and we definitely need to be prepared for them by the time they reach high school to get on the career tracks. Thank you.
Jackie, I really appreciate that. And there's comments in the chat as well that from Tremaine, he is saying something similar, believe there's tremendous value in early exposure and awareness. Do agree that high school and college levels are best positioned for immediate career pathway work and training. And then Dr. Rawls says, perhaps our post-secondary partners could consider outreach in terms of innovative technologies. We do that as we prepare our pipelines anyways. So yeah, definitely, those are all things that we have to consider as we move into that next phase. And that'll be, as 2023, is coming at us, like crazy right now. We're already thinking about that. And so all the things that you just mentioned, what Tremaine's talking about here, Dr. Rawls, we're going to make sure that that's part of the plan. Yeah.
Yes, Stella, I would just say that high schools, and we talk about youth, we want to make sure that we're also specifying opportunity youth. A lot of times that you find in the youth builds and the conservation course.
That's right. Thank you, Adewale. Kimberly, you had your hand up?
Yeah. So and this might go to Crystal's work and some of the conversations we're going to have in January. But is there a list of all of the companies that are working in this sector right now that are doing the on the ground kind of implementation of moving to EV, or so we have some idea what the total population of industry?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, happy to jump in to answer this particular piece. Thank you for that question, Dr. Collins. So we have started some work in compiling a list of, who these companies are, manufacturers are, right, for like batteries or charging stations, medium duty, heavy, um, trucks, manufacturers. So we've started doing that because that's some information that Dr. Rawls needs, right? So we've already started that work, but we also want to. It's a email we have pending that we're going to send to our partners, to over at CalSTART and EPRI, to see, like, from their expertise and their years in this clean transportation work, if they also have a comprehensive list they can share with us to also dig through. But that is some research we've already started doing to give Dr. Rawls some of that information. So we've started putting together that list, but we're also wondering if there is a comprehensive list out there that our partners at CalSTART and EPRI have. So I want to see if maybe Nate could answer that while we're on here.
I might just follow up. I mean, some of the things that we've found are just and it's observational, right? Not through any kind of systematic study, but a lot of the industry, at least in this region, they don't have sort of the planners or the big strategic thinkers, right? They're located someplace else and they're making those decisions. So a lot of the on the ground facilities, they're just going from day to day. They're thinking about their quarterlies. They're not really thinking about the big picture. And so it's difficult when moving forward in having them sort of put okay, these are the employees that we're really going to be needing in the shop floor or where we're working. So I think it's just kind of it's a disconnect that we have right now between a lot of this programming to do the workforce development and what's occurring with industry kind of on the ground, thoughts. And so, you would think of training programs and I want to say I really like the plan. I think the plan is, I agree with my colleagues. It's very comprehensive. It's really good. But, how do we make that leap from everything that we know and all the good stuff that's going on into something that's really pertinent and important for industry itself, so that they see the young people coming out of these programs and like, these are who I need, right? This is what I need. So I've been in a lot of forums where we've talked about it, and I'm sure you all have as well. We've talked about this for a very long time. And there's always that, you listen to Tesla. Tesla's like, we're training everybody. We don't care, right? We don't care what kind of educational programs. We need them to know like this basic, Ohm's theory so that they don't electrocute themselves. But, we don't need this real deep dive training. So I'll leave it at that, but just some thoughts.
Yeah, no, thank you. And while we're on the topic, before we move on to like any other question or feedback but while we're on this topic, just related, I wanted to pose the question to anyone that may be, labor market information analyst or dives into that work. If you'd like to, be a part of that, work, that effort that we're going to do leading up to the January meeting, and join us with Dr. Rawls, the more the merrier. So, definitely let us know, raise your hand, let us know if you'd like to be a part of that work. If you are, doing some of that already labor market, analysis, and would like to join us for this. And then we can present to the larger group at the January meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Giovanni. Thank you, Dr. Collins. And Dr. Yanez, you have your hand up?
Yes, I wanted to share that I found a good report on EV at LA, out of LA EDC. On their website, they did an extensive report, and I identify everybody. I mean, a lot of the industry that are headquartered here, that are local, the natural clusters of EV. And I think it encompasses manufacturing, charging stations, like kind of all the employers under that umbrella. So I've been using that as a resource.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yanez. And yeah, if you can share the a link or the report, that would be fantastic. This is exactly what we're looking for. Yeah, Jackie, I thought I saw your hand up. Did you have another question or comment?
Yes, I was just thinking about everything. I know that we're building a body of research, but then also like along the way, preparing for maybe it's legislation that we have to get passed in order to help us reach our goals. So I just want to kind of put that out there to kind of gear it up for things that we can foresee, and so we'll be prepared. Because something that I've been kind of I would say pondering upon is actual manufacturers and maybe there being a conglomerate in the industry and making sure that we have equity in terms of that as far as the industry, because things are quickly changing and there's power at the manufacturing and the patent of the technology. And so that affects the companies, how people can operate, and therefore how workforce is even then trained. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Jackie. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Something to think about. We have a couple more questions. Dr. Yanez and then Adewale. Oh, so you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I said I already spoke.
Okay.
I'll lower my hand.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Okay. Adewale, wanna close us
Thanks,
off
Dr.
here?
Yanez. Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of piggyback off what Kimberly was saying, Dr. Collins, because I think is very critical to the success of this project. I think we see it often when we're building out new projects like this, and that's the disconnect, and like, where is the connective tissue between academia and industry, and what kind of binds that to make sure that the training is aligned with where the industry is going. So I think it takes all the stakeholders in the room, to put a plan together that's really actionable. So I think there's certain things that, like Dr. Rawls was talking about, where we're bringing actual research to support the direction that we want to go in. But then I think we have partners like JMA and Hector in the room too, who are really on the ground and working with the labor unions, right? And like, how do we make sure that the pipelines that we're building are really family sustaining wages and advancing our communities forward? And then are we really listening to, our industry partners? Like, we have Zeem in the room and they're in the industry. And I think, Kimberly spoke to, the companies really being driven on their bottom line and trying to figure out how to arrive where they need to arrive in order to be sustainable, right? So I think the stakeholders in this room can really come together to make sure that there is connective tissue to the work that we're doing. And at the end of the day, we're not operating in silos and putting together something that's not realistic. But I think the collective body of knowledge is what puts a plan in place that is really long-term sustainable and scalable and has tangible results that we're trying to achieve. So that's why I think it's really important to have the stakeholders and not just have them in the room, but have them actually contributing input, where there are SMEs within, as it pertains to this project plan. So thank you for that comment, Kimberly.
Yeah, absolutely, Adewale. Couldn't agree more. I don't see any more hands. So any final questions? We're going to the next slide. Any final questions?
I do see Jeanette Malik's hand raised.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a couple things. I agree with Adewale and everyone. I'm hoping that when you guys are doing your research with the labor market data, because I know like Department of Labor does a good job of assessing kind of the skill sets. It'd be great to be able to identify what are those skill sets so we can differentiate what may be something we could do as a pathway at a high school, since we know a lot of high schools has programs, and the community colleges and what the four-year university has. Because what I see in the market is we see some very similarities, but some of the skill sets may say, hey, it requires a higher level learning or skill set at a four-year university in comparison to like myself that works at the community colleges, and being able to differentiate what we could know is livable wages for labor. And we could potentially put some or work with other programs that have those. So we're not kind of double dipping or trying to create, more work than we really need to. If we could do that, I'd love to be able to see what that looks like, on our side, or what comes out of the report, so we can easily differentiate where there's potential market or jobs that are going to be moving, or that people are saying are today with some minor modifications to the job skill sets.
Absolutely. And as Giovanni mentioned, Janet, if you're interested, or you have the time to participate in that next step, that would be fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Yanez?
Yes. Okay. Good to see you, Janet. Glad you're on this call. I wanted to make a plug for this board that I'm on. It's called EXP, and it's for high school students, and it's career pathways, and I'm sorry, dog's barking, and it's centered in the ports. So I think that maybe we might do some collaboration with EXP, because they're all about high school pathways to careers, and it's in the same area.
Thank you.
Maybe I can invite them to a meet.
Yeah,
To participate.
absolutely.
Okay.
And we've worked with them with the EXP before, right? Adewale, didn't we have interns before over at the LA office?
Yeah, we've partnered with EXP over the years as well, but it's been a while, so maybe a reintroduction would be good, because I know that a lot of their staff has changed out.
Yes, right. Great, thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments? If not, then we'll go to next steps for the project, and Giovanni will cover that for us.
All right. Well, yes, thank you all so much for the great discussion and the wonderful feedback and recommendations that we've received today, and just the different connections we're making here. Really look forward to the work and the next steps here with you all and the larger group. So as alluded to earlier, we will have our next larger WDAC meeting. The first quarterly meeting for the 2023 year will be taking place on January 12th at 10 a.m. So that's slated for an hour-and-a-half meeting. And we're hoping to, at that meeting, have some preliminary, data information. So anyone that wants to be a part of sort of, maybe we'll call it like a labor market analysis subcommittee, right? With Dr. Rawls. So if someone else would like to join that, whether it's Dr. Collins, Dr. Yanez, Jeanette, anyone else that would like to be a part of that, we can convene as a little more smaller group to talk through what information we all have or have gathered to run the appropriate reports, and put a small presentation together for that next meeting. So again, shoot me an email, let me know if you'd like to be a part of that. Also planned, we do have some industry partner presentations series that we're thinking about. We're still working through those details, different topics that we would like to put together to help increase the knowledge for all committee members on of this sector of the technology. So those are optional, those are not required, right? But it's sort of supplemental kind of a webinar series that we would like to organize for you all. So again, that's more details to come in the near future for that, as we're still working through some details. And then if there are additional feedback that folks would like to give us on this particular plan that we all reviewed together today, we are taking this information and embedding it into the plan and incorporating it. And so we're taking your feedback very seriously. We record these meetings and we go back and transcribe a lot of the feedback and the comments that people make, and really document that and take it very seriously. So if you have any final comments, we'll give everyone until end of day Monday. Please email me. You'll see my email on screen with any final recommendations, comments of, something that maybe you thought of after the meeting, right? So feel free to email me with that. And then, as we've been doing, we'll be following up with a follow-up email with a copy of the presentation, the meeting summary notes, and a recording to the present to this meeting, so you can look back at it as well. And again, if there's other people that you see that is missing that you think should be at the table, please feel free to continue to make recommendations. There's been a great number of recommendations we've been receiving, and growing our list of participants. So keep them coming. All right. And with that, I think it just takes us to our contact emails here. This is the GRID team here. Again, Adewale is stepping in for Shamika, but she'll be returning in a couple of months. But here's our contact information. So again, you'll get a copy of this with all of these emails. And then next is also the CalSTART team that you could also reach out to as well. So I'll see if any of my colleagues have any final words.
Nope, we just really appreciate, again, can't thank you enough for participating. As Adewale mentioned, this is such a diverse group of organizations and individuals, and that's what we needed. That's what our goal was from trying to form these advisory committees. And so you see your partners that are willing to work on this, that feel that this is really a really important effort. So we can't thank you enough for this. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo that, Stella, and just say this is, I think, important period as we continue to move towards this clean energy transition. And I think with all the stuff that's going on around clean mobility right now, we have the opportunity to really impact the communities that we serve in this space. So having the diversity of stakeholders here is super important and gives us the opportunity to get it right, so that we can put something in place that's of value to those that we serve. So really appreciate your time today and your engagement.
Yes, thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time today. Absolutely. And we'll be in touch. Yeah, and with that, we'd also like to acknowledge our partners, who have made this effort possible. It's been a collective effort. So we also just want to thank all of our partners that you see on screen, but all of you as well for your partnership and your support on this effort and everything else to come in the future. We thank you in advance.
Thanks, everyone. Have a happy Veterans Day, and have a great weekend. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.